Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So my name's Katie and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 books of the latter half of 2021. So basically I split my top 20 books into two halves of the year. So I already have my January to June video, which I will link in the cards. I don't know which side it's on. And then I will be doing this video. So this is my top 10 of books I read from July to December. And then I'm also going to do an overall top 10, which is my very top 10 of the year, the top 10. So in this half, I do have a couple of arcs, which I was a bit torn whether I should include them or not, but they do come out early 2021. So I thought I would because they were some of my favourite books that I read this year. But in my actual top 10, I'm not going to include any arcs. So that was the compromise I came to with myself. But yeah, so this is the top 10 books of July to December. So it's my top 20 of the year. So we've got some all-time favourites and some kind of runner-ups, but they were all 5 stars, so yeah. The first book, we could not make this video without this book, and that is Rhythm of War by Brendan Sanderson, and I love this book so much. Yeah, this is going to be my favourite book of the year. Spoiler for the next video. But yeah, this one just, I just love it, the themes, the characters. I love Kaladin Stormblessed so much. And yeah, Stormlight Archive is my favourite series. I would definitely recommend at least checking it out to see if you'd be interested, if you're even vaguely interested, if I've hyped you up enough. It's such a good series. It's so epic. The characters are also great. They're so kind of real, and they have all these kind of struggles. There's a lot of discussion around mental health. Especially in this book. I really love the themes and kind of the sort of almost invention of talking therapy, which is really cool. And I love just Kaladin, who's one of the main characters, his journey. I love it so much. And then also in this book we follow Navani, who is this scholar, but she's been quite kind of her old husband was quite emotionally manipulative and abusive to her. And she doesn't see herself as a scholar, but this book we're kind of following her and her discovering her own merits and her discovering her own personality without being who she is to other people. And then there's this other kind of semi-antagonist character called Raboniel, who I just love. Raboniel. Yeah. And I just love all the characters, Adeline, he's so sweet. And yeah, so it's a really great series, and it's going in such a good direction. And yeah, and the listeners in this book as well, I love them. It's so interesting, exploration of kind of a different culture from the Maine, and we're kind of, yeah, the Alethi are almost the villains to them, so it's really interesting look at that. And yeah, I just love them all. Yeah, so I adore Rhythm of War. I feel if you want more of my thoughts on it, I have many videos. I have a Rhythm of War reading vlog, which is spoiler free. I have a Rhythm of War book talk. I also have me reacting to 1-star reviews of Rhythm of War, which I thought was quite a funny video. So yeah, that one, which I love. So yeah, this is my treasured possession. Next we have One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. So this is their second book, which is, it's not a sequel, it's not even a companion book. It's just by the same author. They wrote Red, White and Royal Blue, and this one is even better in my opinion. It follows 2 characters. So August, who's she's just moved to New York and she's sort of struggling a bit, know kind of where she fits in life, and she's just kind of a bit lost. And then one day on the subway she meets this mysterious girl called Jane, who's kind of almost a bit out of time. And she only ever meets her on the subway, and then it's discovered that Jane's actually in a sort of time warp type thing from the 1970s, which is really cool. And it's a beautiful exploration of New York as a city and its history, especially its queer history, and the kind of, yeah, just August kind of learning stuff about herself. The relationship is so good. It's such a beautiful novel, and it has so many cute and hilarious moments, but also has a lot of kind of deep and heart-wrenching moments, and some really kind of impactful scenes. So yeah, it's really good. It's a rom-com with kind of a hard-hitting note, so I would highly recommend this. Get pre-ordering, and yeah, and the colours, I just love it. So yeah. Then next we have A Memory of Souls, which is the 3rd book in the Ruin of Kings series. So I actually read this whole series this year, but yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I love the characters. Like Kieran is this little dumbass, and then Terieth is like this kind of charming, like not pirate but like assassin type character, and then Janelle's like this really kind of fierce warrior, and they just had the best dynamic. And then the other characters were also following these kind of godlike characters who are kind of gods but they're also people, and they sort of are getting involved in like the drama that's going on at the moment, which is really cool. And we're also following kind of these other characters who are like, there's a lot of soul swapping that goes on, so like characters can soul swap, so like who you think people are isn't always who they are, and just these like important characters from the past are still around, and the family politics are like so convoluted, and it's just so good. And in this one especially we get more of like the gods and how they're sort of influencing events and like playing into events, which I loved. And then we also have more like OT3 dynamic. Oh yeah, I love Kieran and Terieth and Janelle. I just love them. And yeah, just the whole kind of, and we're finding out more about the kind of main like villain type character, who is sort of, so Kieran in the first book, he's like part of this prophecy that's like not a chosen one prophecy, but he's like prophesied to be the villain. So we're kind of exploring that a bit more in this one. There's these two kind of villain characters who are so interesting because they're not, you're almost on their side, like you don't, they're quite evil but you like really root for them. Yeah, and so like one of them, Relosvar, he's like the kind of evil one, but also you kind of like him. But then Serenea, his kind of like assistant, she's also very like, I love her, but she's kind of like, she's sort of on his side but she's sort of on the other character's side, and then she has this other dynamic. So the books are kind of told like in almost not a diary format, but they're like told as though they're being told as a tale to you, and then you have footnotes from the narrators, and they kind of alternate between a character called Thorovashar and a character called Serenea, who I was just talking about. So Ruin of Kings and Memory of Souls are Thorovashar, and then A Name of All Things is Serenea, and I expect the next book will be Serenea because they kind of alternate, and their dynamic as well is so good. Oh yeah, so I just love this series. Then next, because I couldn't choose one, we have Gideon and Harrow the Ninth, which if I really can't choose. They're just both so good. Like I was saying about the god dynamics and like powerful immortals, Harrow just delivers, and then Gideon just the like necromancy and the kind of mysterious like gothic mansion, and there's like murder mystery, and they're just so chaotic and so crazy, and like you love all the characters, and the like banter is hilarious. The like dialogue and the jokes are hilarious. Oh, just the characters, they're so good. I love them. And the audiobooks are amazing as well. They're narrated by Maura Quick, who I think she does Lydia, I think, in Dark Age as well, but she's really good. And she just fits the voice of Gideon so perfectly, and like her accents for like the posh characters are just so great as well. And oh yeah, so I really love them. I'm so happy I have the like physical copies. I just hold them close to my bosom. Oh yeah, so I'll do a basic summary of Gideon. So we're following Gideon, who's like this, she's in the 9th house, and she's sort of been brought up in the 9th house. She was kind of delivered there as a baby, like a mysterious sort of circumstances, and she's kind of quite at odds with the 9th house, like she's always trying to escape. But then one day Harrow, who's like the reverend daughter of the 9th house, she convinces Gideon to go with her to try and enter this competition for Harrow to become a lictor, and then Gideon's like her cavalier, which is her bodyguard. And yeah, so and they go to this other planet. This is like the first house, so it's called Canaan House, I think. And they're kind of in competition with all the other houses to see like who can find the secrets to lictorhood. And they're in this mysterious like gothic manor type house. And then people start dying, and it becomes almost like a murder mystery. But there's also these like godlike figures, and the necromancy is so cool, and it's just all so good, and the characters are great. They just make the book, and oh yeah, so I just love it. It's a really great series. I would highly recommend. And the skeletons are so funny. Like I didn't even like, they're just, it's like screaming, and then there's the naughty skeletons in Harrow. But yeah, so I love these books, and I'm so happy I read them this year, and I have them now, so yeah. Next we have The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood, and this is another one which like it kind of reminds me of Gideon a little bit, but it just like snuck up on me with how much I loved it. I read the audiobook and I really loved that, and I'm so happy I have a physical copy now. Thank you to someone got me this for Christmas, but they didn't leave a note, so I don't know who it was, but thank you so much whoever did. And yeah, so I'm really excited to have this. We're following Solway, who's like, she's been raised in this kind of like culty type church thing. It's not, yeah, it's more of a cult than a church. So, but she's been like raised to be this kind of sacrifice to the Unspoken One, who's like this monster that lives in these like tunnels. And like every few years they raise this like sacrifice, so she's the next one. But then the night before due to be sacrificed, this mysterious kind of traveling like sorcerer comes and convinces her to run away with him, and then she kind of becomes the apprentice to the sorcerer. And then so we're kind of following that, and then we're following again when she's more grown up and she's going on this like mission for her kind of sorcerer mentor. And then there's all this like complicated politics, and like they're trying to hunt down this kind of artifact thing, but there's kind of a few like moral questions, and it's so good. And there's a sapphic romance as well, which is super cute. And the banter between Solway and one of her kind of sort of brother, they're not actually related, but they're kind of like adopted siblings. Their banter is so good. And the way they like hate each other, but you know they secretly love each other. But yeah, so that's really good. So I just really enjoyed it. It's such a fun ride, and there's like the magic is cool as well. We don't get a huge amount of magic, but it's like sort of necromancy type, so yeah, it's really cool, and like raising kind of revenants, and yeah, so I just really enjoyed it. And I'm really excited for the next book, so yeah, that's that one. Okay, then next we have Archive of the Forgotten by H.J. Hackworth, and this is the second book in the Library of the Unwritten series, and this book is just like my new comfort book. It's so good. So we're following, so like in the first book in the series, we're following this kind of Library of the Unwritten, which is like a wing of the library in hell, and it's where books go that haven't been written yet, so like books that authors haven't kind of brought into their minds yet, or no, they have in their minds but they haven't actually written down. And basically in the first book, this escapee character called Hero from a book kind of escapes from the library, so the main librarian Claire and then her assistant Brevity have to like track him down, along with this like weird anxiety demon thing called Leto. He's so cute. So yeah, they're tracking him down, and then they're also kind of being stalked by this like angel thing called Rami, or Ramiel. But then in the second book we're kind of following after the events of the first one, and these characters are just like in this little squad, and like now Rami's part of the family, and oh, I just love them, like their whole dynamics. And Hero, so Hero, the escapee book character, he's kind of, I would say, the main focus of Archive of the Forgotten, and his like journey is so beautiful, with like him discovering what it means to be a person rather than just a character from this book. And oh, I just love it. And yeah, it's just like so wholesome and just like so fun to read. Like it doesn't have a huge like plot, but it's a good plot. It's like kind of good, like not gods, it's kind of like if you like libraries, and I feel like if you like this is a really weird comparison, but if you like the Magnus Chase books then you probably like this series. They also, yeah, they remind me of another, Good Omens as well. I feel like they remind me quite a lot of Good Omens. But yeah, it's a really great book, and I just really enjoyed it. The audiobook's really good as well. I enjoyed the audiobook. Quite a lot of these books actually I read on audio. I do like my audiobooks. And next we have The Galaxy and the Ground Within, which is another art which comes out in February, and this one was so good. I loved it so much. So this is the newest book in the Wayfarer series by Becky Chambers. So they're more like companion books rather than a series, but they all kind of tie into the same universe, and often like one of the characters will have a connection to the other character. So like in this one, Pei, who is one of the main characters, she's kind of in the first book as kind of the like secret girlfriend of Ashby, who's the captain of the Wayfarer in The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. So in this book we're kind of following these kind of about 5 strangers who all kind of get stranded on this planet together, while 2 of them are already living there. So there's kind of this planet which is like this stopover planet in this kind of area of space, which is like quite a big travel hub. So these 2 characters, Ulu and Tuppo, they kind of, so Ulu's like the mother and then Tuppo is like the child. They kind of run this like almost hotel type thing where travellers can like stop over for a few hours when on their way while they're waiting for their like ring gate to open. So in the novel, these 3 different characters are stopping over when suddenly like things go wrong, and like there's this big like orbital breakdown of satellites, and so they're all stuck. They're kind of stuck with each other, and they're all from different species, which is really interesting. It's really interesting actually, there's no like humans in the book, which I found really interesting, and it's really kind of good look at like almost, I don't know what the term is, it's not quite biology, it's on my mind, taxonomy, no, something along those lines. But yeah, and just these characters who are so different kind of having to come together and like learn from each other and grow from each other, and how they become like accepting of differences, and how they kind of have these like preconceived ideas of other species, but how they're kind of like tackling those sort of preconceptions. I just think it's a really beautiful book. And then there's also a bit about like medicine and healing, which I loved, and then there's also a bit of kind of like motherhood and themes, because like Tuppo and Ulu, so Tuppo's like a child, and just that kind of, but they're kind of a teenager almost, so that kind of dynamic. And then Pei also has a bit of kind of struggles about motherhood, and also struggles with her relationship with Ashby, because they're from different species, and in her culture it's seen as very like taboo to be with a human, because Ashby's human, so that kind of her struggles with that as well. I love the book, and Becky Chambers' writing is so beautiful. It's like this kind of warm hug, and you just feel so comforted, and it just feels like the perfect like remedy to 2020. And also just the kind of like slowing down in a busy world type thing, and I just love it. So yeah. Then we also have Winterkey by Kristen Kershaw, and this one comes out on the 21st of January, and I love this one so much. So this is the 4th book in the Graceling series, and it's kind of, I would say the first 3 are kind of, they all have the same, even though they're set quite different times, they all have the same antagonist, who's kind of this like overarching figure, which is interesting. But then this one is kind of a bit separate, and they're kind of traveling to this other continent, which they previously didn't know about, and we're kind of following 2 halves. So we're following completely new characters that we've never met before, who are from this new continent, and then we're following some of the old characters from the original like Graceling trilogy. So we've got Bitterblue and Gideon, they're the main 2. We also get a bit of Saf. I love Saf, but he's hardly in the book, but I still love him. So yeah, so Bitterblue and Gideon are travelling to this new continent to investigate these 2 like 2 of their people, because Bitterblue's the queen, who were drowned at sea, but they think there's like some foul play going on. And yeah, so we're kind of following them as they go to this country, and like things go wrong. And then also the new characters, so the main one we're following is Lavisa, and she's very interesting because she's kind of been brought up in this house, which kind of on the surface seems like very kind of idyllic, but then there's a lot of like domestic like drama and kind of manipulation and violence. There's quite a heavy trigger warning, I would say, for domestic abuse. But you just see how it influences Lavisa's psyche and like her attitudes towards other people, and the kind of, I think this one perfectly executes the like the sort of family kind of trauma, because I feel like the other books they sort of explore that a little bit, I think, but this one I feel like is the best executed out of the 4, because it's just, Lavisa's character just is so like perfect, how she's kind of been raised and how that shapes her character, but also how she kind of wants to get out of that situation, but also the kind of guilt she feels because she has these 3 little brothers who are kind of still in the house, whereas she's like living in the dormitories of her school, and it's just really complex like family dynamics, and her parents are so like, oh, the kind of, yeah, it's fascinating, and you just like want to know what's going on, and there's all these like conspiracies, and it's so good. And then there's all this like drama starts happening, and oh yeah. And then also Bitterblue and Gideon, their dynamic, I am now a hardcore Bitterblue and Gideon shipper. Like I didn't really see it in Bitterblue, but now like, oh, I love it. So yeah, that was a fantastic book, honestly. Like I feel like sometimes I'm a bit dubious about kind of continuations of series, but Winterkey is so good. I think it's probably tied for my favourite with Fire, because I do really love Fire, just like the monsters and the dells, but Winterkeep's really good. And it also has these like telepathic foxes who are so cute. I love animal companions. Yeah, so that's also good. So we have The Martian by Andy Weir, and I also read this one on audio. The audiobook is amazing. I feel like it just fits the voice of Mark Watney, who's the main character, so well. So in The Martian we're following Mark Watney, who gets kind of stranded on Mars after his sort of mission with his friends, like not friends, like, yeah, they're friends, but they're like astronauts together. it goes wrong. So he's like by himself on Mars, and they think he's dead, but he's actually alive. So it's him kind of having to survive on Mars with his potatoes, and it's just so good. Like, the humor is so great. Mark Watney he's one of my favorite like narrators of a book. It's just his like humor and his kind of wit, and it's so good. But also the plot's really good, like him having to survive in space, and I feel like the science is really interesting, especially because it's quite like this is another instance where I want to say biology, but it's not quite biology. It's like the kind of plant ecology, I guess. Yeah, that's really interesting because Mark Watney's a botanist, so that's cool. And then we're also following a bit of the kind of NASA like drama back on Earth, where they're trying to decide like when to tell the public, because they realise he's alive, so they're kind of trying to decide whether to tell the public and how much, and like, and how they're going to rescue him, and like whether to tell his crew who are on their way back to Earth that he's actually still alive. Yeah, so it's really good. I really love that, and it's quite short as well, so if you're looking for just an audiobook that's like a great time but also has a really good kind of plot as well, I would highly recommend. And then finally we have The Witchlings Girl, which is, this book just hit my soul. Like, it's very much following healer characters. So each kind of village has this witchling who is kind of the kind of healer of the village, and they look after all the kind of health, like medical concerns, but they also sort of do the kind of childbirths. So they're kind of like, in our modern times, I would say a cross between like a GP and a nurse and a midwife. But then they also do the kind of death. So when like a person in the village dies, they get brought to the witchling, and then the witchling can either kind of guide them into the like realm of the dead, or they can like bring them back, sort of resurrect them, but at the cost of their kind of soul. So if a character's been resurrected, they can't then like pass on into the spirit world. They will just become this like they're like resurrecting for a few years, and then they'll kind of rot and just like be completely gone forever. So that's really interesting, and we're following the main character, and she sort of is, at the start of the book, she's young and she becomes the apprentice to the witchling of the village. So we're kind of following that and their sort of relationship, which is quite tumultuous at first, especially. And then we're just following her grow up and how she realises the things that, how the witchling raised her. It kind of comes full circle, because then towards the end of the book, she then gets her own apprentice, and that's really interesting. And she also meets this mysterious like girl called Leah, who's kind of keeps popping into her life at different points, and Leah's this yeah, she's quite powerful, but she's also very mysterious, and at one point she's kind of being hunted by the like government type thing. So the main girl, she hides her away in like the attic of the witchling's house, and the witchling's house is also like this kind of like magical house, a bit like the kind of houses with chicken legs in like Russian folklore. That's what it very much reminds me of. So there's just lots going on, and it's a beautiful book, and the writing's so kind of lush, and also the healer, like the whole healer thing, I love. And like there's these scenes where these like characters giving birth, and oh, it's just so emotional, and just the whole like death magic, and I just really loved it. I think it's a great book. Yeah, and it's sapphic as well, so obviously. So yeah, so that is my list of my top 10 books from July to December. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and comment down below, let me know what one of your favourite books of 2020 was. I would really love to know. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I hope you're all having a great day, and I will see you next time.